Welcome back to the broadcast, episode 13. Wonderful Friday we're having here. It's good to be back with y'all. I hope everyone's having a wonderful Friday as well. Hope your day's going good. Hope you got some plans tonight, doing something big, something fun. Today's cast is going to be on unwanted advice, vegetarianism, and the halo effect. So let's jump right into it and let's go from there. Okay? If a little bit of you may not know this, I am technically someone who primarily eats vegetables as a dietary choice, okay? I do cook a lot of meat and a lot of fish, a lot of times for other people or friends or family, but most of the time I eat vegetables, and I think it's a healthier way of living. I don't think that it is the best choice, because I think the best choice is independent of who the person is, and I think everyone has different needs and unique options, but I've always found primarily eating a vegetarian diet to be incredibly healthy. And I want to make it very clear that I don't call myself a vegetarian because I essentially don't always eat vegetarian food. A few times a year I'll have meat during the holidays, and I eat fish maybe once a month. But other than that, it's pretty much vegetarian food 24/7. It's something I feel a little bit healthier doing. My body cleans itself out a lot better. I have more energy when I do it too. Not to mention I feel better. So it's a physical feeling, a mental well-being, and it gives me more energy as well. There's a lot of reasons that people become vegetarian. I have found that a lot of times it has to do with the treatment of animals, and I think that's a huge one that a lot of people overlook, especially if you're a meat eater. Again, I don't condone not eating meat. I do condone understanding where it comes from and understanding that when you buy something from the store, if it's not like a local place, a lot of times these animals have either been genetically engineered or they have gone through a lot of suffering and have essentially died in probably a very cruel way to be consumed by you. And this is not a moral high ground argument I'm making. No. I'm just saying make sure you recognize that. And I think if you do recognize that, it's something that makes people a lot more understanding, right, and respectful of the food that they have, because you always want to respect what you're eating, especially if it's a previously living organism. It's important. We're all in this together. We're all connected, I believe, and that was a life that essentially gave itself up so that you could continue living your own. And it's important to just recognize that. I'm not saying you have to, have a big thing or a big, make a big deal of it, but just when you're eating something, just don't forget that it's like that wasn't a creature that was alive. And if you wouldn't have eaten that, perhaps it'd still be here today, because that is really the takeaway. But as long as you do that, I think you're fine. It's just being respectful of nature. Big fan of nature. Love doing my hikes. And I again, highly recommend, if no one's tried it yet, start with Meatless Mondays. That's a great way to do it. See how it works out for you. I promise eating less meat is a lot easier than it used to be. There's so many options available. My favorite is Beyond Sausage and Beyond Burgers. They taste incredible. They don't taste like burgers, or the sausages actually taste exactly like real sausages. It's crazy. But the burgers don't inherently taste like burgers. They just taste like an equally tasty thing that's not a burger, but it's also shaped like a burger. But check it out. Let me know what your thoughts are on it. So that's the first topic, really. We're going to keep it pretty light today, see if we can't finish up a little quick so we can all enjoy our Friday. We don't have to have these big, long talks, but, just so you know, tomorrow I'm probably going to be doing my first interview with a buddy of mine who owns a business. And if you guys are lucky and you like and subscribe this video and it gets upvoted, perhaps on Sunday we might do an interview with a big local musician around here, which would be pretty cool. He's a friend of mine, and I would love to hear his take on how his creative process works, because making music is not something I'm very understanding of, but I love listening to music. Okay, so maybe if we're lucky, we'll get him on the podcast as well. But let's jump into our main topics today. So two main topics. receiving unwanted advice, and the halo effect. Okay? Now, the halo effect topic, we're going to touch on today a little bit, but that's such a large topic. I may break that into a full-fledged video on its own at some point in time. But going into it, receiving unwanted advice. This is something that a lot of people struggle with, and it's something that I have struggled with in the past. Right now, primarily, I struggle with giving unwarranted advice. And as you can tell, we have a podcast, so one could suggest this is my outlet to do that, where I don't have to directly pass it on to others, But it's a two-sided problem. You have you giving unwanted advice to people and you receiving unwanted advice from people. Now, one of the most interesting things I've learned in my life is a quote I received from a buddy of mine who I look up to, and I've always seen as someone who I can, if I ever needed to, run my ideas behind, and I feel like has my back. This guy named Q at one of the places I used to work at. And this is when I first kind of started out and started making my own in my career. Q was kind of like a larger, older brother than I am. And basically he gave me this advice. And let me set the setting for you. I come to this company, very mediocre company at best. And it's not that they didn't do a good job. It was that they didn't really care about the work they did. It was like everyone was there to get a buck. And that's fine. There's nothing inherently wrong about working just for money and not caring about what you're doing. But the problem was they also kind of passed that along to everyone in the company, and that mindset was kind of like, look, 9 to 5, not a single minute or second more, and we're done. We don't really care what work we're taking. We're just kind of coming in, and it was like so stressful to me because it felt like I was working with zombies sometimes who just didn't care. There was a guy who I used to work with in this company. This is a funny side story before I get back to it, who used to fall asleep at his desk. And he was my coworker. So it was this team where there was 4 of us. 2 of the people were this guy who's fall asleep, Q, and myself, and then a lady who was the team lead. Basically, Q and I and this guy who would fall asleep all had kind of like the same job to do. And so it was like a big bucket of work, right? And he would pass out, and we were just kind of done with his bullshit. And what we would do is we would just take his work, finish it for him before he woke up, and then he would just wake up like at the end of the day and be like, oh, I'll get some of this done tomorrow, and just tell the team lead. And we would just be like, nah, it's cool. We already finished your work. So he didn't really work. And the craziest thing was he got paid 2 or 3 times as much as me. It was at least twice. I think it was actually 3 times as much as me. And I literally just did all of his work. He had no responsibility at the company. I'm not saying he was a bad person. I'm just saying he was a lazy person. And I still love him to death. Don't get me wrong. But, this is setting the stage for what this company was. I came in this starry-eyed, young, strapping gent, and they're like, we're going to pay you basically pennies, basically nothing. And that sucked. That sucked a lot, But you have to struggle a little bit before you kind of make your way in this world, I think. And I was willing to take that, and I came in with this perspective where I wanted to make everything better in this company. I wanted to help improve the whole idea of what this company was, go after new clients, and I was continuously shut down. Every good idea I brought to the table may not have been perfect, but it came from a good place. And basically, I found it incredibly tough to kind of grow because of how poorly these people treated me and treated everyone else who came in the company. There was people that I heard basically would get fired from just walking in and yelling at clients. They just wouldn't show up for work. It was such a cast of characters in this company, and it was like Q and I were cool and we chatted. There was another couple ladies in the back that we sometimes hung out with, which were really cool too. I remember one of them, his name was Ashley. If you ever listen to this, what's going on? And then, another guy named Brian I used to hang out with at the place. He's pretty cool. I hope everything's going well with him. And a very sharp guy who came in one time named Mark, who was actually left to go to the same company I did. We actually ran into each other there at one point in time, but he was brilliant. He shouldn't have been here. But anyway, so I get to this company, starry-eyed young guy, I'm ready to make my way in the world, and Q gives me this advice. He says, hey, stay in your own swim lane. That's the best advice I can give you. Because I would run things by him. I'd say, hey, what do you think about me bringing up this idea to the big man, who would be like, our overall director or company head of basically this branch in this DC area. So Q would say, stay in your swim lane. And I have taken that statement to heart since then, and it has always resonated with me. It's so simple, and I'm surprised I never heard it before, but I got to give him credit. He's the first person who told me that. And he didn't mean it as a negative statement, right? But he saw me for what I am, and he saw the company for what the company was. And being someone who had a lot more experience than me and a lot more wisdom, he was able to basically identify and say, hey, you've got this young kid who's coming in who wants to make things better. And then you got this company that really doesn't give a shit at the end of the day. And eventually it's like a train running into a train. They're just going to hit each other. And he knew that, I'd be the one to lose. And he was right, So after kind of still suggesting things, I would get shut down for every recommendation I made. And it was like so frustrating. And that's when I finally realized, perhaps I am trying to step out of what I am moving towards, what my job is in this company. And that's when I realized how problematic that can be at times. If you're someone who is always giving advice, you have to wonder why you're always giving advice, right? And is it because you have something that you're thinking internally that you have that's unresolved, that you need to work on, that you think you could do it better? That you would be in a position to make something better than someone else could? Or is it that you're actually trying to help, this company or someone grow in a certain way? And I think that when I was younger, that age, I really thought that I could do it better. And that may or may not have been the case, but no one cared about that. And that's the big thing. When you give advice to someone, you have to understand that a lot of times they don't care. And they're not going to change their opinion or their mind. A lot of times it falls flat on deaf ears. People don't generally change when you give them advice, and you have to understand that. So if you are someone who is hell-bent on giving advice and making recommendations, understand that most people don't care about what you have to say, and that doesn't mean you're not giving the best advice in the world. It just means that most people have better things to do. And you shouldn't waste your time always trying to recommend these things to other people. Focus on yourself. Bring yourself up. In that specific position, I was upset because, I wasn't getting paid as much. I was doing twice the amount of job as the normal person there. And it was frustrating, and I just wanted to make the company better. And it was like the best option for me at the time was to leave the company. And I fought that, and I was frustrated because I felt like I didn't deserve to leave, but that was incorrect at the time. It was like I worked harder than what the company wanted, and they should have fought for me. They should have done more, but at the end of the day, that's the choice that a lot of people have to make sometimes, but I digress a little bit. The point is, going back to it, stay in your swim lane is important because you have your own goals, right? And your own goals have to align with the goals of another company if you want to basically be headed in the same direction. The whole phrase itself comes from the idea of, like, if you're a swimmer and you're swimming a race, if you imagine like everyone is starting at the start, they shoot the gun, and then boom, everyone like starts swimming. If you veer off into someone else's swim lane, it's not that it's going to affect you so much as it will impact someone else, right? Because you're going to knock them out of place. And if you knock someone out of place, then you're basically encroaching on a different person's goals, a different company's goals, a certain ideology, a certain mindset. It doesn't matter what it is. But focusing too much on others means that you essentially focus less on yourself. And in my case, my goal was to change so much that it didn't work very well with the company, and the best option for me was to leave as soon as I could. Now, I prolonged it a little bit because I enjoyed working with Q, so that was fun, but I could have actually left a lot sooner than I thought, right? So that's the first piece to it. Is like, okay, if you're someone who likes to give advice, and I use myself as a great case on that, try to do that less. The second piece to that is receiving advice from others. Now, this is an interesting one too, because you're going to find in your life, there's a lot of people out there that just want to give you advice, that just want to tell you how to live your life, tell you how to change things, how to do things better and different. And there's a lot of different ways you can deal with that. You can go nuclear and say, hey, screw off, or you can actually do something nicer, which I would recommend, which is kind of taking that under consideration. A lot of times I say, I'll take that under consideration. And for what it may mean, you could literally just do nothing with that advice, but at least you're letting the person be heard and getting it out there, And it's important because if you go nuclear with telling someone to, stay in your swim lane or go screw off, it's like, if you're not coming from like a place of like love, you might lose a friend or someone that you care about, because it hurts to have your own advice get shot down, And I find that there's a lot of people out there that love to give advice, and it's like when you tell them, I really don't care what you have to say, that can be very negative. They take it to heart a lot of times. So it's something to be wary of. And the second piece of this is, you should always at least consider taking the advice. And this is why I like to say I'll consider it, because a lot of times you'll find that the advice that people give you is better than the advice you have yourself. And you could be doing something faster, cheaper, better, quicker, than you potentially had thought how to do it yourself. And it's like, then you're just saving yourself time, effort, money. And who doesn't want that, right? But it's a fine line you have to balance. You have to balance taking this advice and either adopting it, which means you have to accept that your way of doing things is completely wrong and needs to be, thrown away. And then you adopt someone else's ideology and say, that's my new way of going about things. Or you say, essentially, I hear what you're saying. I've either tried this before and it doesn't work, or I don't care. And to back that up, there's an important piece that lies in that too, because even if you are someone who's junior in your field, junior in life, whatever, it doesn't matter, there's a point where you still shouldn't always take someone's advice, even if it's the wrong answer. And let me be very specific here. If you're always taking the advice of others and not building those systems in your own brain to learn how to solve problems on your own, it's going to be very difficult for you in the real world, because there's a point of, am I just trying to go after the goal, or does the journey matter as well? And I'm here to tell you the journey is just as important as the goal, if not more important. It's not about getting to the end of the race. It's about how you got there, right? And learning to not always take advice, and it's kind of interesting that I'm arguing for this, is kind of important because it allows you to build those systems that learn how to solve problems quicker. And once you have that, you can then take that and build upon that and grow and, improve your time to finish a lot of things so much quicker than you would by just getting to the answer as quick. So the idea of what I'm saying is, don't always take advice from people, but sometimes it's important. The best recommendation is consider it, right? Because going through that struggling process to learn how to get to the end result of something is valuable as well, So before we get to our final topic of the day, to recap, if you're someone who likes to give advice, stay in your swim lane unless it comes from a place of love. If you're someone who is receiving a lot of advice, recommend taking it under consideration, but don't always take the advice and run with it. Sometimes go through the struggle, come to the conclusion yourself. It's going to learn and teach you how to build yourself and your process to get to the end result. Also, conversely, sometimes do take it if it's like, incredibly good and it's like, wow, that was such a simple way to do something. So kind of a judgment call you're going to have to make. Now, the final topic I said, I'm probably going to break into a larger video on itself because it's kind of a really cool topic and I want to bring in some studies on it, but it's something that I was thinking about today, so we're going to just touch on it a little bit right now. Let me get a glass of water first. delicious. So the halo effect, okay? Now, the halo effect is something that can be applied in many different areas, right? But essentially what it roots down to is seeing only the good in someone, okay? And this is something we are all guilty of. Our brain works this way. And this is why I want to talk about it in a video that expands upon this a lot more. But the way our brain works, right, is when we see something that we like or we want, we basically block out the things that make this item, this person, this idea, this theory, this thing bad, and we basically don't see them, and we just see the good, okay? You see this consistently in politics. You see this consistently in business. You see this consistently in your personal life. You know, if you've ever been in a rocky relationship before, sometimes you can see this in your partner a lot of times too. It doesn't always come from a place that's negative, right? If you love someone and care about them, you might overlook their inequities a lot of times, but it's like that doesn't make them go away. You know, conversely, if you have friends that, you know, are doing things that may not be so great, sometimes you might not see them, and you just see your friend because you love them and you want to, you know, make sure they're okay. You know, but this is something that we have to all be wary of, right? Because this can have very lasting effects on our life. This can have very large impacts on how we go through life and how we perceive things and the outcomes that we're trying to get to ourselves, right? If you're going through life and basically putting up your own blinders, you're going to miss so much. You're not going to make the best decisions that you could have if you would have seen things for who they are. And that's really the antidote to this, is to fight your own sense of who someone is and see them for how reality poses them, right? You know, if you're someone in the political world, you know, look at a candidate for who they are. Go to the record. I'd recommend don't even listen to what they say, you know, but no politics on the broadcast, so we're not getting into that. But it's a general idea that we're talking about on how to verify if, you know, someone is right for you. Going into that further, you know, if it's the business world or your personal relationship, when you're interviewing a candidate or working with someone for the first time, or maybe you're with a lover or something like that, or girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, you know, whatever it is, understand that, you know, they make mistakes, and it's like, you don't have to rag on them for making those mistakes, but know that it's possible for them to make them, and they will come. So when they do make a mistake, understand that it does not take away from who they are, but they do make the mistake, right? And you should recognize that, because they're going to keep making them if you don't bring that up. If you don't allow them to take some of that negativity and own it, right? Because you don't want to build someone up, because another way you can do this that's incredibly hurtful is not only to yourself, is to another person, right? If you see that person that you really care about, right? Maybe you're eyeing someone that you want to go on a date with, but maybe they're not the best person in the world. You know, we all have our problems. You know, maybe they have a few negative traits here and there. Recognize them, okay? Accept that is who they are, because if you're not, you're building them up to be like a fairy tale of a person that never existed, and that's not even who they are. You know, you're making up a story that didn't exist. Then you're lying to yourself. And conversely, if you get into a relationship with this person, what happens then? They don't grow anymore. And whose fault is that? That's your fault, you know, to a certain degree. If you're always forgiving what they do, not seeing the negativity, the bad things they're capable of, you know. And again, we're not going in to say, like, hammer someone if they do something bad. No, that's not the idea. The point is, let reality take hold. That's so important. Bring things back to where reality sits. You know, lift the veil. You know, open your eyes. Don't blind yourself. If you blind yourself, you're actively making yourself ignorant. You're actively choosing a answer that is not correct, and that's going to affect you in so many different ways. I can talk about it all day long, but in a effort to save some time and start enjoying my Friday, we're going to end this broadcast on that. And I think I'm definitely going to be doing this halo effect video in the near future, so look out for that. But if you enjoyed the cast today, like, subscribe, share. It definitely helps me out. I love chatting with you guys, and I really appreciate you listening. We got some big interviews coming up, and hopefully you enjoy them as well. Catch you guys later.